Somewhere in your family right now, there's a house with a closet nobody's opened in 20 years, a basement with boxes stacked to the ceiling, a china cabinet full of dishes that never once touched a table. Most of it isn't worth anything. I'm going to be straight with you about that, because there's a whole industry built on telling folks their old stuff is a gold mine when it isn't. But some of it is worth real money. Not maybe, not someday. Real money at real auctions with receipts. And the ones that hit hardest are almost never the things your people thought were valuable. We're walking through the house today. Kitchen first, then the front room, the bedroom, and last the drawer where all the papers ended up. 25 things. Go look after. You could hear it before you saw it. That low iron scrape across the burner grate. At 6 in the morning, the pan too heavy to lift with one hand. Her skillet was probably a Griswold or a Wagner. Flip it over. If the bottom says Erie, Pennsylvania in thin script, you're holding something cast before 1907. And the rare Erie spider skillets have sold in the thousands. The odd sizes matter too. A number 13 or a number 20 almost never comes up. And when it does, serious collectors show up for it. This is where people lose money without realizing it. They take a wire wheel to it and strip it down to bare gray metal before they sell. Don't. 40 years of Sunday chicken built that surface, and the old foundries hand-polished the cooking face before they quit doing it in the 50s to save money. You can't put that back. Certain rare Pyrex patterns have crossed 4 figures at auction, and one promotional pattern that was never sold in stores has gone for several $1,000s. Look for the nesting bowls. The primary color set with yellow, green, red, and blue. Look for Jadeite, that pale green Fire King glass that restaurants and churches bought by the case because it wouldn't break. Half the fellowship halls in the country ate off Jadeite. Chips kill the value. So does the dishwasher, which is why the pieces that stayed in the back of the cabinet are worth more than the ones that got used. If there's a bowl in your family with the paint still bright and no scratches through the color, set it aside before somebody uses it for potato salad this summer. There's a woman in Alabama whose grandmother's church put out a spiral-bound cookbook in 1962 to raise money for a new roof. It sold for $1. Copies of that kind of book now get bought up by university archives and food historians who understand what they're actually looking at. But the recipe box beats the cookbook every time. Handwritten cards, measurements that don't make sense, somebody's name written next to the dish so everybody knew whose sweet potato pie it was. Notes in the margin arguing with the recipe. The stained cards are the valuable ones. Grease marks and fingerprints prove the food got made. A clean card nobody cooked from is just paper. Institutions are paying for these because they document how Black families cooked in a way that no published book ever did. Go open the china cabinet. Not to use anything, just to look at the bottom of a plate. Depression glass, carnival glass, cut crystal, hand-painted Japanese china from the 50s. That cabinet was a statement piece in a lot of Black homes, and the dishes inside it were bought slowly, one at a time, sometimes from a catalog on layaway. Some of that catalog china turned out to be genuinely good, and complete sets in perfect condition bring more than most families expect because almost nobody kept a full set intact. The candy dish matters more than you'd think. Cut glass with a lid, always full of butterscotch, never actually opened. Those specific patterns have their own collectors, and I know what you're thinking. Nobody ever ate off those plates. That's exactly why they're worth something. They came free, and that's what makes them rare now. Cardboard church fans stapled to a flat wooden stick. One side had a painting, usually a white Jesus or a Black family at prayer or Dr. King. The other side had the name and phone number of the funeral home that paid for them. Collectors of Black Americana hunt these specifically because of that backside. Those funeral homes were Black-owned businesses, and for a lot of small towns the fan is the only surviving record that the business ever existed. When the home closed, the paperwork disappeared. The fan didn't. Fans from funeral homes that no longer exist bring the strongest prices, and complete sets from one city have sold for thousands to collectors building regional archives. You fanned yourself with those things through every August service of your childhood. Somebody's writing a history book with them now. Everybody had one. The room with the plastic on the couch that you weren't allowed to sit in unless company came. Let's go in there. It weighed 300 pounds, and it took 4 grown men to move it. The console stereo was furniture first and electronics second. Long wooden cabinet, speakers behind fabric grills, a lid that lifted to show the turntable. Magnavox, Zenith, Silvertone, and the ones people actually chase now. The mid-century Danish-styled cabinets that look like something out of a design museum. Working units in good wood sell in the hundreds and sometimes low thousands, but most families don't realize the cabinet is often worth more than the electronics. Folks part them out, gut the guts, and sell the shell as a credenza. If yours still plays, don't touch the internals. Original tubes and original speakers in a working console are what separate a $500 sale from a $2,000 one. And if the finish is dull, leave it dull. Refinishing kills it. In 2016, a single 45 by Junior McCants on the King label sold for $17,100. It was a promo copy, one of the only known ones in existence. The most famous one is Frank Wilson's Do I Love You, a Motown single that was pulled before release. Almost every copy got destroyed. The ones that survived have sold in the tens of thousands. Now, I'm not going to tell you your grandmother's Supremes album is worth a fortune, because it isn't. Millions of those were pressed. The money is in the 45s from tiny regional labels, the ones nobody's heard of. Records that came out of Detroit and Chicago and Memphis on labels that folded after 4 releases. So don't sort by artist, sort by label. Anything with a name you don't recognize, set it to the side and look it up before it goes in the donation pile. Ask yourself something. Is there still a shoebox of 8 tracks in a garage somewhere in your family? Everybody laughed at 8 tracks. The format lost, cassettes won, and most people threw them out by 1985, which is exactly why the ones left are worth something now. The value isn't sentimental. Some albums had different track orders on 8-track than on vinyl, because the format required breaking songs across program changes. Serious collectors want those variant sequences, and a few soul and funk titles only exist that way. Sealed tapes in original shrink wrap bring the most. Car units and home decks from the era sell too, especially the chrome-faced ones that mounted under a dashboard. The chunky plastic cartridge everybody made fun of turned out to be the survivor. In May of 2022, a painting called The Sugar Shack sold at Christie's for $15.3 million. You know the one. Ernie Barnes painted it, and it ended up on the closing credits of Good Times and on the cover of a Marvin Gaye album. The original went for $15 million, but Barnes prints and posters hung in black homes across this country for decades, and signed and numbered ones now sell well into the thousands. Same goes for the other prints that were everywhere. Charles Bibbs, Annie Lee, the ones you'd see in every barbershop and every auntie's hallway. Annie Lee's originals and early limited editions have real collector demand, and her work is in museum collections now. Check the bottom edge for a pencil signature and a number written like a fraction. That fraction is the difference between a $20 poster and a $2,000 print. Aaron Douglas painted the visual language of the Harlem Renaissance. His auction record is $500,000, set at Swan Galleries for building more stately mansions. Jacob Lawrence went higher. His painting The Businessman brought $6.1 million at Sotheby's in 2018. Now, nobody's saying there's a Jacob Lawrence in your basement, but both of those artists also made prints, lithographs, and illustrations for books, magazines, and church programs, and that part gets overlooked. Douglas illustrated covers. Lawrence's work ran in publications that ordinary families subscribed to. Exhibition catalogs, gallery programs, and signed announcement cards from black art shows in the 60s and 70s also carry value, and they turn up in the same drawer as everything else. If there's framed art in your family that came from a gallery show rather than a department store, Get somebody to look at the back of the frame before you assume it's decoration. 3 pictures, 1 wall, in that order. Dr. King on the left, John F. Kennedy on the right, and Jesus in the middle. Sometimes Robert Kennedy took a spot. Sometimes it was a single frame with all 3 printed together. That combination print is one of the most recognizable objects in 20th century Black American life, and collectors of Black Americana now buy them specifically. Original 1960s printings in the original frame bring the strongest prices, especially the ones where the 3 portraits share a single sheet. Condition is usually terrible on these because they hung on a wall in the sun for 50 years. That's fine. Buyers expect fading. What they don't want is a reproduction, and reproductions are everywhere now. Original ones have a printer's mark somewhere along the bottom edge. Look for it before you decide what you've got. Now the closet, the cedar chest, and the top shelf you needed a chair to reach. In 2025, a quilt from Gee's Bend, Alabama sold for $16,000 at a folk art auction. Another one, by Betty Bendolph Seltzer, brought $5,600 against an estimate of $800. Gee's Bend is a specific place with specific quilters whose work hangs in major museums now. But the market they created lifted every hand-pieced quilt made by a Black woman in the rural South, because curators finally recognized the improvisational style as a tradition rather than a mistake. Look for fabric that came from work clothes, feed sacks, and worn-out dresses. Blocks that don't line up on purpose. Colors that clash in a way that clearly wasn't accidental. Machine quilted, store-bought fabric. Perfectly matched corners, that's a craft project. Scraps and asymmetry, that's the tradition. Wash it and you've destroyed it. Leave it exactly as it is. Baby Nancy came out in 1968, and she was the first widely sold Black doll with an afro and features that actually looked like the children playing with her. She was made by Shindana Toys and Watts, a company that came out of Operation Bootstrap after the uprising. Black-owned, Black-run, built specifically because mainstream toy companies wouldn't do it. Loose Shindana dolls and played with condition, run around $100 to $300. Boxed examples with the original pamphlet go higher, and museums have been acquiring them for years. The whole line matters. There was a career doll named Wanda who came with a booklet about real Black women in that profession, with their photographs and their own words about the work. If your family kept a doll like that, instead of putting it out with the trash, you're holding an artifact from one of the most important Black-owned companies of that era. Reach into the back of the drawer and feel for metal teeth. The Afro pick with the raised fist handle wasn't a novelty. It was a statement you carried in your back pocket, and it showed. Black Americana collectors buy them now, particularly the ones with unusual handles, sculptural fists, peace signs, and the ones with manufacturer stamps on the shaft. Full disclosure on the money here. Most picks sell for tens of dollars, not thousands. Anybody telling you different is inflating. The exceptions are the ones still sealed in original packaging with the header card intact, and those can reach a few hundred. But the museum interest is real. Institutions collect these because the object carries the entire politics of the era in a piece of stamped metal, and almost nobody saved theirs. Yours is probably in a bathroom drawer right now. Authentic Kente is woven in narrow strips and sewn together, and you can see the seams if you look at the back. Printed cloth with a Kente pattern stamped on it is not the same thing, and the price difference is enormous. During the Black Power years, families bought real African textiles, hand-carved figures, and ceremonial masks. Some of it came from importers who were bringing genuine pieces out of Ghana and Nigeria and Mali. Some of it was tourist work made for export. Genuine older carvings with real wear patterns and authentic ceremonial masks with evidence of use go to serious collectors and to museums. Vintage wax print cloth from the 60s and 70s has become collectible on its own, and fashion houses buy original bolts of it. If somebody in your family traveled to the continent and brought things back, that trunk deserves an appraisal. Not a guess, an appraisal. They were bought at a shop on the corner, and they cost more than the woman buying them could really afford, and everybody knew it and nobody said it. Church hats are moving into the collector market now, And the wide-brimmed statement pieces from the 50s through the 80s are the ones people want. Designer names matter, and so do the milliners who made them by hand in black neighborhoods and never got credit outside the church. Museums have mounted entire exhibitions of them. Costume institutes collect them. The ones with the original hat box and the store label inside the band do best, because the label proves where it came from and often names a black-owned shop that closed decades ago. Storage is everything here. Crushed is worthless. If there are hat boxes on a closet shelf in your family's house, do not stack anything on top of them. Empty containers are worth money, which sounds ridiculous until you see the market. Ultra Sheen jars with the original label, Afro Sheen bottles, Duke pomade tins, and the one everybody wants, original Madam C.J. Walker tins from her company's early decades, which collectors and black business historians both chase hard. The packaging is the point. Those containers are the surviving evidence of black companies that built real wealth when almost every other door was closed, and most of the corporate records burned or got thrown out when the company sold. Store displays, cardboard advertising signs, and sales catalogs from those companies bring more than the products. A countertop display card for Ultra Sheen from a black barbershop is a piece of business history that no archive has a copy of. Check the medicine cabinet in the old house. People never throw those jars away. Last stop. The drawer, the file box, the manila envelopes. This is where the real money hides, and it's the part families throw out first. A 1949 edition of the Green Book sold for $50,000, and Harvard bought it. That's not a typo. Swan Galleries in New York sold that copy, and the library paid $50,000 for an 80-page paperback that originally cost about a quarter. A 1941 edition brought $22,500 in 2015. A 1958 Negro Traveler's edition set a record at $27,500. Victor Green was a postman in Harlem. He published a guide telling black families which gas stations would let them use the bathroom and which motels would take their money. Then integration came, the books stopped being necessary, and almost every copy got thrown away. They were disposable by design, and that's exactly why the surviving copies command what they do now. If there is a small paperback travel guide in your family's papers, do not let anybody put it in a yard sale. Did anybody in your family graduate from a segregated black high school before it closed? Those yearbooks are being collected right now by universities, historical societies, and genealogy researchers, and there is real competition for them. Most of those schools were shut down during integration, the buildings were sold, and the records went into a dumpster. The yearbook is frequently the only complete list of who attended, who taught, and what the school looked like inside. Books from the 20s through the 50s bring the most. Condition matters less than you'd expect, because scarcity beats condition every time on something this rare. Signed pages and handwritten notes add value instead of subtracting it, which is the opposite of how it usually works. Somebody in your family has one of these in a box. That book is a public record that no longer exists anywhere else. James Van Der Zee photographed Harlem for 50 years, and his prints sell in the thousands at auction. Gordon Parks goes considerably higher, but the ones I want you to look for aren't by famous names. Go find the studio portraits. Formal photographs taken in a neighborhood studio, mounted on thick cardstock, usually with the photographer's name embossed in the corner. Those neighborhood studios were black-owned businesses, and archives are actively buying their work because it shows how black families chose to present themselves when they controlled the camera. The embossed name in the corner is what makes it valuable because it identifies the studio. Loose snapshots of everyday life carry value too, particularly ones showing businesses, storefronts, and street scenes. Don't scan them and throw the originals away. The print is the artifact, not the image. They were printed the week somebody died, folded into a program, handed out at the door, and taken home by everybody who came. Homegoing programs are now being collected by genealogical libraries and Black history archives, and they've become one of the most useful records in existence for tracing families. A single program lists the deceased, the parents, the surviving children, the church, the pastor, the funeral home, and often a full obituary written by someone who actually knew the person. Census records don't do that. Death certificates don't do that. Some families kept everyone they ever received in a shoebox or tucked in the back of a Bible. If yours did, that box is a family archive and researchers will want it. And while you're in the Bible, look at the front pages. The family tree written there in 3 generations of handwriting is a legal-grade genealogical document, and courts have accepted them as evidence in property cases. A signed album page from 1944 with both Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige on it sold for $21,500. Negro League material is one of the strongest markets in all of sports collecting because so little survived. Programs, scorecards, pennants, ticket stubs, and team photographs from the Monarchs, the Grays, and the Crawfords all bring serious money. Even a 1940s broadside advertising a page appearance sold for $1,860. Same holds for Ali. Ticket stubs from his fights, original fight posters, and magazine covers from his years fighting the draft all have their own market. And don't skip the paper from the theaters and the shows. Apollo programs, Soul Train tapings, concert handbills from Funk and Soul, acts at venues that closed 40 years ago. Fraternity and sorority materials from the Divine Nine belong in this pile too, especially early chapter documents and paddles. If it's paper and it has a date on it, somebody wants it. I want to leave you with the one thing that runs through all 25 of these. None of it was saved because anybody thought it would be worth money. The fan was free. The green book was a quarter. The program came from a funeral. The skillet was just how you cooked. It got kept because somebody in your family decided it was worth holding on to. And then somebody after them decided the same thing. And that's the only reason it's still here. So before anybody cleans out a house in your family, slow down. Open the boxes. Ask the oldest person still living what things are before the answer goes with them. Which of these do you remember in your own family's house? Drop it in the comments because I read every one of them. And folks in there have been naming things I've never even heard of. Hit like if this made you think of somebody, and subscribe so you catch the next one.